wise man once said, "The poor you will always have with you." I've always wondered if that was a condemnation or just a prophecy. Well, we're going to ask that question of our next guest, Karl Robillard of the St. Anthony's Foundation. Now, St. Anthony's has been dealing with the poor for how many years?
Centuries. Centuries. I wish I knew the exact date. Older than me.
Oh.
Longer than me. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I mean, St. Anthony Foundation has been helping San Franciscans at the lowest level of the economic rung for
64 years.
64 years.
In fact, will have just celebrated our 64th birthday.
Now, as part of your 64th birthday, you've opened this incredible new facility. How does that feel?
It's something we've been working on for 15 years. So St. Anthony's opened on October 4th, 1950. And prior to the door opening, people had been basically handing out lunches in bags. People were eating, they were being nourished, but they were doing it alone. So there was really the thought, our founder, a Franciscan priest named Father Alfred Bodeker, knew that this was about more than meals. This was about being in a community and being surrounded by people who will take care of you and welcome you. So we have been doing that for 64 years. We would joke in our original dining room, which used to be an auto body shop, it was the Winchester House of Mystery for dining rooms. I mean, it was never meant to sustain and to keep going for all these years. So this new facility is something that we have been sort of dreaming about and knowing that was really necessary for us at St. Anthony's.
It's not usual for any institution that's been around for 6 decades to have kind of just relentlessly good PR, right. But St. Anthony's have. I mean, I think anyone who lives or works in the Bay Area has driven by St. Anthony's and seen the line of people getting in. I mean, it really does tug at you to know that here in one of the world's most affluent cities that blocks away from people who are making millions of dollars, we have poor who don't know where the next meal are coming from.
Yeah, I love your sentiments of what you said. I think St. Anthony's has a very unique ability to break barriers down that kind of separate us. And I think the geographic one you just mentioned is absolutely true. I mean, you have Nob Hill, one of the wealthiest square miles on planet Earth, 1 mile or less from the corner of Golden Gate and Jones. But the beautiful part about St. Anthony's is it takes all of those folks to make it work. It takes everybody, San Franciscans who have a little bit of something to give, to provide, and for us to then translate that into the meals and into the clothes, into the medical care that we are able to do every day.
Right. The Tenderloin is one of the parts of San Francisco that is undergoing the most radical change. I mean, I myself am taking part in a fundraiser that's helping a great Tenderloin organization, the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. It strikes me, again, here we are in the middle of this rich city, we're still raising money, and a lot of it's going into the Tenderloin. What is the transformation that's going on in the Tenderloin, and why is it still such a needy neighborhood?
Probably the origins of that, there's many, many explanations, but one is some of the housing that was built in the Tenderloin was built in the 20s and 30s. This is after the 1906 earthquake, after most of the city had been leveled. It was really built to be short-term tenement housing. There's a whole, World War II came, people were kind of in and out of this neighborhood. It was convenient, it was central, but it was very overlooked. And I think once you establish that kind of mode, it becomes that even as it evolves. And I think it continues to struggle because the other thing about the Tenderloin is it absorbs so much of the whole city's issues. Things that could happen and are allowed to happen on the sidewalk of the Tenderloin could never happen in other parts of the city. Yeah,
if they happen in Pacific Heights, there'd be a fleet of squad cars there.
One of the populations we serve are parolees. One of the things that can happen to a parolee is when they're released, if they do not have family, if they do not have an easy reconnection, where do you think they end up? They don't end up in Pacific Heights, they end up in the Tenderloin.
Right.
So there's something about that neighborhood that has absorbed so much for so long. And I think that what makes it challenging to kind of evolve like you see the Mission and other neighborhoods in San Francisco.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about some of the hard facts and numbers. How many people do you serve? What is your constituency?
So if we break it down into people, it's interesting because one of our biggest populations are seniors. That's also one of our fastest growing. And I think when people think of St. Anthony's and other nonprofits, they sort of have that image of, we say, the rice and the beard, that classic homeless look. That is certainly a part of our population, but a very significant part are seniors, many of whom work their entire life. They're counting on maybe $1,000 or less in Social Security. If anybody lives in San Francisco, $1,000 does not get you far. And it's a fixed income. You don't get a raise, you don't get a big promotion on Social Security. So we dedicate about the first hour of our meal service exclusively to seniors, pretty much. So that is a big population I'm not sure people are aware of. We deal with a lot of folks who are mentally ill, both mentally ill and addictively ill. And if you have an addiction and you have no resources and no way to find help for that, it's very difficult. We serve a lot of recent immigrants, people brand new to this country, and we also serve a significant gay, lesbian, transgender.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, one of the things that is unique about St. Anthony's, and I think a lot of institutions in San Francisco is, they may have their name and their affiliation from the Catholic Church, but that doesn't seem to keep them from serving the LGBT community. Not that would work very well in San Francisco.
Right. Well, I mean, the hard facts are close to 30% of people who identify are homeless are LGBTQ. Your show indicates 10% of the general population. So what that means to a service provider like St. Anthony's is that in some cases being gay leads to poverty. So that's absolutely a fundamental part of our mission. The other thing that people so rarely realize, that I have such admiration for Father Alfred, who started St. Anthony's in the 50s. It was originally called St. Anthony's Free Dining Room, and we've sort of dropped the word free. And most people assume that free implies it doesn't cost anything. The free that he was talking about in 1950 was free of proselytization and free of government funding. He did not want people to prove their poverty. He did not want people to have to be forced into a kind of religious persuasion. He wanted you to come because you're human and because you would be loved. And that was it. And that still remains true to this day. And this has been consistent for 64 years.
Now, a proof of one of the facts that you're just talking about, the millions of people you've been serving. We have here, this is a food tray. Tell me a little bit about this and what it indicates.
So the signature you see is Senator Dianne Feinstein. This is her very aesthetically cute.
Yeah, people don't realize that she's also an artist.
She did that in about 2 seconds with no warning, and I was really impressed. And she came and served our 13 millionth meal in 1979. She had just become mayor. This was almost right after.
So this is an artifact.
Yeah, well, now it could be, yeah. I mean, we had her sign this. This was recent, but she commemorated the meal she served in 1979. I mean, I believe it was like months after Milk was assassinated. She came back in February to acknowledge our 40 millionth meal.
All right, and then this tray is also very special.
So this one is, it sort of was symbolic of the very final meal we served in that original dining room. And while it was very necessary for us to move into a new space, there was a real sort of emotional attachment. So this symbolized the very last meal we served. This will also symbolize the first meal that we will serve.
So, in our last few moments, talk to me about the mission of St. Anthony's vis-a-vis this changing tenderloin. I started off by saying that wonderful biblical quote, the poor we will always have with us. Is the tenderloin always going to be a pocket of poverty?
I wish I could answer that. I mean, I wish I was a soothsayer and could answer that. But what I do believe about St. Anthony's is so long as the poor are here, they will always have a place to turn. And I think it's an incredibly important mission, and it's an important concept for people to understand. So I'm proud of St. Anthony's that we are a home and a place for the poor to turn to.
Now, it's not just people in the Tenderloin that you serve. I mean, people do come in from other parts of town, correct?
We do. In fact, one of the programs I don't know that many people realize is we have a full year-long drug and alcohol recovery program. This is an all-male program. You qualify because you qualify for food stamps, so essentially you have very few resources. And that program actually gets residents many from the East Bay. We actually get a number from Grass Valley and around the state of California. So when we think of our dining room, most of those people are coming from the Tenderloin, 6th Street, Chinatown. But when we think of some of the other programs, it definitely spreads out.
Right. And how many people per day? I mean, I've seen the line on my office is very close to St. Anthony's. It's at 5th and Mission, just a few short blocks over. And I drive past it on the way in and the way home, and there's always a line. So
we serve about 2,700 meals every day, and that's over the span of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The first meal we served was 300 meals on October 4th, 1950. I'm saying that because Father Alfred envisioned we would not have to do this forever. He really thought there would be a time limit. But he said in 1950, by 2000, there will be no need for this. It's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, those of us who are old enough remember LBJ's Great Society, and we're still.
Well, there was 1950. There's tremendous hope after World War II. But, there still is hope, and we're proud to be part of that hope every day.
So you have hope, but I mean, you're optimistic. I mean, like the lines seem as long to me.
I think San Francisco is struggling. The cost of living here is so expensive. I think this is no longer a struggle just for St. Anthony's guests. This is a struggle for me and many people who are trying to make it and what in any other part of the country would be a middle-class lifestyle. The hope really comes from, people always think, I'm going to give to St. Anthony's because I have money or time, and that's wonderful. But what I don't know that people realize is St. Anthony's gives right back. And some of the people I have met working there are some of the most inspiring and incredible people I've ever met. In fact, coming into your show, I saw a gentleman right out front, used to be doing really well, is no longer doing well. I recognized him. There's something so human and something so binding about being there together. And so it's easy to keep that hope when you're there.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the social aspect. So it's, as you said, it's not just meals. These people come together, this probably is their only social interaction of the day.
It could be, yeah. In fact, we did a survey in 2011, and we found that about 85% of our folks either live on the street or live by themselves. So there's something, when they come to St. Anthony's, they are ready to be in community. They want to be there, and there's not a lot of cell phones. Not that we don't allow them, it's just you don't see them. There's something very timeless about that form of community that we see every day.
Okay. We just have a few moments left.
Yeah.
I'd like you to tell me what your wish would be for the new St. Anthony's facility.
It's a great question. I think this new building will really showcase that when you treat people with dignity, the building embodies dignity, and its very being. That when you treat people with dignity, they rise to the level that we want all people to be, a world in which we all flourish.
Well,
and I think this building will do that for us.
Well, and of course they say St. Anthony of Padua, the patron saint of lost things.
Exactly.
So it sounds like he's helping a lot of lost lives find fulfillment.
He is.
Thanks very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Next up, we'll talk about someone who's trying to bring dignity from the LGBT perspective back to the San Francisco Board of Education. Our conversation with Mark Murphy. We'll be right back.